Okay, so this is the second session of the Swiss Rifle Sharpshooters Handgun Training Program. Now, I didn't actually think up that name. Our good man, the events coordinator, well, I can't remember his name. He thought it up, and I thought, okay, well, that's a great idea. So the impetus of this course was that we want to try to introduce people to the basics of handgun shooting and kind of see if we can steer more people to participate in our club handgun competitions. We'll be shooting up there later up today at the 25-meter pistol range. If you guys got your own guns, great, we'll blast away with those. I also brought a whole bunch of mine, and so you know we got a lot of good stuff to be shooting here today. It's like thumbs up all around for that. A little bit about myself. So I was a former Canadian military small arms training range operator, meaning I ran the simulated training range systems that taught all the soldiers how to use the basic small arms, so C7 rifle, assault rifle, C8 carbines, C9 and C6 machine guns, M72 light anti-tank weapons, and M203 grenade launchers. So all of those, I actually have them. I have that knowledge scrolled away somewhere in the back of my mind. If somebody ever says, "Hey, here's an M16 with M203, give her." That all said, upon releasing the military, I went to work at the Shooting Edge, where I qualified as a tactical handgun instructor. And simultaneously, I served on the board of directors at the BTSA next door, where I founded their Young Guns Kids program, youth program, as well as their Action Shooting League program, and I ran a whole bunch of their programs. We're not going to really be doing much in terms of action shooting, but we will learn some of the basic stuff that if you guys want to do some of that later offline and a separate venue, then I'd be happy to take you. I myself have been wanting to get into it. Quick note about me personally. Oh, wait, sorry. So, BTSA. Oh, also, I was also on the Government of Alberta Firearms Advisory Committee in response to the Trudeau gun bans. So if you search up my name, you'll see that I was. Oh, hello. Are you here for the handgun course?
For the handgun?
Yes.
Yes.
Come on in, friend.
Yeah, sorry to be late.
No worries. We'll do the introductions later if you just don't mind signing in. And just drop your name down there. Okay. I'm just recording right now for the YouTube channel, so you can catch the intro on leisure. Okay. What's your name, friend?
Mark.
Mark. Great. Coffee and donuts over there. Grab a seat if you'd like. A little bit about me personally that informs the way I think, act, and do everything, including how I shoot. Perfect. Thanks, Mark. I'm a very big family guy, or not family. Very big family man. I'm happily married with 4 kids. One of my children is very, very severely disabled, and so my time on the range is actually my sacred time to have a bit of what's called a respite or a break to kind of recalibrate. I really love teaching people how to shoot, and so that's one of the reasons I'm here. Here's one of my cards. Remind me later. There we go. It's 5 there. Remind me later to write my phone number down there if you guys want to get in touch with me there. So that's a bit about me. I would like to acknowledge all of the past instructors who have trained me and have taught me, and my hope is that I can share with you a lot of the knowledge that I've gained from them, and that you can apply that knowledge and hopefully grow into the sport and maybe one day teach somebody else, because knowledge is life, and the sharing of knowledge is the sharing of life. And if you're not learning, and if you're not learning, you're stagnant. And if you're not sharing knowledge, well, you're actually dying. So that's kind of a philosophy that I live by and informs how everything I do. Cool with that? Let's start by reviewing, I know this is kind of old, a quick show of hands. Everybody here has their license, their RPAL? I think everybody does. No? Everybody has a...
Yeah, I'm just kidding. It was just a joke. Yeah, I do have.
Okay, you have, but everybody has a PAL, like even or non-restricted.
Restricted.
Okay, restricted all around?
Yeah.
Great, okay, so everybody here should be aware through the Canada Firearms Safety course, our basic firearm safety rules. Assume every gun is loaded, control the muzzle, T for trigger finger, off the trigger, S. Okay, when we're on the range, we always be sure of our target. When we're at home, we show that it's safe and we prove that it's clear. I know that's a little bit of a morphing of what they teach in the course, but is that clear to everybody? The S for be sure of your target is extra important when you're handling a handgun compared to a long gun, because it's such a small firearm, or such a small tool. It's very easy to just pull a very small hand movement and all of a sudden you're pointing the target at yourself or somebody else. Okay, very, very important. Whenever we're on the range, we be extra careful of our muzzle control. That's why the S consideration really stands for handguns. Cool, everyone's cool on that. And of course, we should all know our approve, point in a safe direction, remove the magazine, or remove the ammunition source, observe the feed path, verify the chamber, and examine the bore. We're all taught that in our safety course. We should all know that, right? Extra careful, especially when we're at home and we're handling our guns. We're all cool with that? Okay, with that out of the way, a couple of administrative tasks. Everybody has eye and ear protection for the day, correct? All right. Eye and ear protection, especially with handguns, is mandatory because we just got so much brass flying around. You don't want to get a piece of brass to the eyes. Nobody's walking around here in sandals, I presume. Great, okay, everybody's got closed-toe shoes, awesome. Let's begin with a little bit of, I'm going to use here, this is the frame for my Glock 19 here. Okay, you can see that there's no slide on there, so it's just a frame, okay? Let's start with the basics of grip, okay? Like me, I'll give everybody a quick handshake here, okay? When you're holding a handgun, you want to hold it with a firm business handshake. Like you go to a job interview, you meet your future boss, and you want to show them that you respect the man, but you're not scared to death of the man, right? So a good, firm business handshake, okay? You're not going to be like gripping it with a death grip as if it's like the end of the world. Just hold it with respect. Think job interview, okay? Two-handed shooting. Now, modern semi-automatic pistols are designed in such a way where you put your thumbs on the side, like such, pointing forward towards the target, okay? Don't invert your thumbs like this, or don't do anything goofy, and especially do not cross your hand like this, okay? Unless you're shooting a revolver, but I didn't bring a revolver today, so we won't be doing that, okay? So this is kind of the modern semi-automatic handgun grip. Now, if you watch old war movies, or you watch like TikTok, or whatever these kids are all about these days, you'll see people trying and doing all kinds of different stuff. You know, again, during World War II, like when my grandfather was fighting in Japan, this was how they explained to everyone to shoot a pistol. For the Filipinos and the Americans, that wasn't wrong, because they won the war, right? But time and technology has evolved, and so, especially George, you said I think you had a Glock. This is the optimal, ideal way to shoot a semi-automatic pistol, especially a Glock, okay? You'll notice how the back of the grip here, this beaver tail, has this sort of little ledge up there. You want to have as high of your hand choked up as high as you can without getting bit by the slide or the hammer. Thankfully, I didn't want to torture you guys today, and I didn't bring a Browning high power, but for the Glock, I personally have the highest possible choke as possible, and I'll explain why in a minute. But if you're shooting a gun like my Browning high power, the hammer will bite back and it'll nick it every single time. At the end of the day, you'll have this obnoxious little bruise on your hand, which is normally why I shoot with gloves. Okay. Any question about that with the grip so far? That's clear as mud and makes sense. Now, the way I was taught and the way I tend to shoot is you push forward with your hand and the hand that you pull the trigger with, and you pull back with your support hand. So it's kind of like a 60-40 sort of ratio. Push 60, pull back 40. Okay. Now with all these movements, you don't want to be like death gripping everything and locked in place. You want to be kind of loose. You kind of want to be like relaxed and applying as much muscle tension as you need to maintain stability. All right. Now with handgun shooting, all that it is practicing until you figure out where that point is and never forgetting it. Okay. If you don't shoot a lot or it's been a long time, you may not really remember that. And if you haven't shot before, it'll take some time and iteration and practice to figure out where that spot is. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? So we talked a little bit about grip. Okay? Let's talk a bit about breathing. Okay? And this, quick show of fact, who here shoots a rifle or a long gun? Everybody here? All right? When you shoot a rifle, how conscious are you, as in how aware are you of where in your breathing cycle you shoot? Anyone? You're pretty aware?
I go in the middle.
You go in the middle?
Like
Okay.
neutral breath.
Neutral breath, yeah.
I do 2 deep breaths, and the third one I go halfway, and that's when I
Okay.
shoot.
Yep, that's great.
I just breathe and then take a breath as I'm ready to shoot, and then I pull the trigger.
Okay, yeah.
I do when I'm exhaling, right? So
I'm sorry?
I'll exhale and pull the trigger.
Great, yeah. And George, same.
Yeah, 2 deep breaths.
Yeah.
And the third one, I don't shoot in the middle, I shoot at the bottom.
Okay. So the way that they teach in the Canadian military to shoot a rifle is a big breath, not so big a breath, breathe out, and very close to the bottom, but not at the bottom, pause, shoot, exhale, reset. And so whether you're shooting a pistol or you're shooting a handgun, especially if you want to shoot for precision, finding that point is very, very important. Now the reason for that is, okay, I always mix it up. In the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Fight, flight, rest and relax. When you breathe in, you're priming yourself to enter fight, flight mode, okay? When you exhale, you're priming your nervous system to go into rest and relax, okay? And that's why you go as close as you can to rest and relax before taking your shot. Boom, boom, boom. With all guns, but handguns in particular, the thing that will destroy or the thing that will ruin your accuracy is flinch, okay? If you're,
Yeah.
right? Well, if you've got all the other basics right, flinch is the thing everybody battles with, okay? If you are shooting very close to the top of the breath, your body has a lot of oxygen circulating through the blood, and your muscles are ready to act. But if you are close to the bottom of the breath, your body starts to draw oxygen away from your muscles into your brain, so your brain can focus, and it slows it's called a varied delay in the order of milliseconds, the response to flinch in response to a loud noise or to a surprise, right? Now you may have heard people say with handgun rifles, like, oh, well, let the shot surprise you, let the shot surprise you, let the shot surprise you. That's an old myth that's kind of right, in that if the shot surprised you and you're at the bottom of the breath, any time that you flinch will be after the bullet has left the barrel, okay? But if you're really jacked up because you're at the top of the breath, you'll shoot and you'll flinch a lot faster. Or in anticipation of the shot, your muscles will tighten up and then you will flinch. That's why the breath is very, very important. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that?
So can you write like a kind of line of breathing, and when we should pull the trigger, kind of
Yes.
exactly that would be?
Okay, more like this, okay? And, let's see if I can remember the exact diagram. I should have printed it out. Okay, this is full exhale down here. In, here, out, but very close to the bottom. You're gonna wanna pause. Okay, and then somewhere in this pause, you're gonna take your shot, and then you're gonna exhale again. And then you're gonna reset. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you don't want to shoot like up here. You don't want to take the shot up here or here or here, right? Like above the top, right? Here, this is where you're gonna flinch, or you have or anticipate the shot. Down here is where you're the most steady. Down here. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
And there's an interesting universal life skill that you can actually pull from this. In special operations and with SWAT teams and with high stress professions, there's a technique called box breathing, and you can do this anywhere. All it is you consciously think to yourself, I'm gonna breathe in to the count of 4, I'm gonna hold to the count of 4, I'm gonna breathe out to the count of 4, and then hold to the count of 4. Now, applying that to shooting breathing, the breathe out and hold 4, that's where you want to train yourself to shoot. So In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and in that hold 2, 3, 4, you want to take your shot, okay? And if you actually practice this, I actually do this a lot, it's a meditative exercise. If you practice this, you can actually practice extending, being at this bottom of the breath for an extremely long time. Under the right conditions, I can actually be in that position for up to a count of 60, so about 45 seconds or so. This really helps a lot with all marksmanship with shotgun, pistol, rifle, is if you can actually consciously train yourself to be in that bottom of the breath state for a long period of time, that greatly improves your accuracy. Does that make sense? And by improving your accuracy, what I mean is it greatly reduces the probability of you flinching, okay? You know, we like to say in life, pull trigger, pull trigger, pull trigger. Well, everything we do in life, we're just pulling trigger. I'm gonna pull a trigger on brushing my teeth. I'm gonna pull a trigger on making an omelet. I'm gonna pull a trigger on buying 3 ounces of gold, right? In life, you really wanna train yourself to pull trigger when you're not about to flinch. That way you know everything that you do is conscious and deliberate. Okay. Does that make sense? General life lesson. So for all of you young kids who are watching this after the fact, think about that before you ask that girl out on a date, all right? Anyway. Okay, so we talked about stance, we talked about grip, we talked about breath. Let's talk a bit about stance, okay? So again, this is a slide, okay? Or sorry, a frame with no slide. I'm gonna sweep you guys with that. Are you guys comfortable with that? You guys aren't gonna get all mad at me? So I apologize, I normally bring my trainer pistols for this. So are you guys okay if I sweep you with this?
Yep.
Okay, 30 years ago, everybody was shooting handguns thinking you needed to stand in a position called the isosceles position. That was your dominant hand, your leg or your foot is indexed backwards or it's braced backwards, and you step forward with your support foot. Okay, so I'm shooting with my right foot is back, my support hand is left, my left foot is forward. Does that does that make sense? However you want to do it, whatever feels natural. If you want to make a perfect L, you want to make a slight V, you want to do whatever feels natural is probably right for you, okay? This was how they used to teach cops back in the 70s and 80s. You watch Dirty Harry. They're shooting somewhat like this, okay? This is called the isosceles stance, okay? Reason why they did that was because a lot of cops back then and soldiers didn't usually wear body armor. And if you stand this way to a target, you're bladed to the target and you present 30% of a smaller target than you would if you were fully squared off on them, right? Okay. That's a big deal because instead of a 15-inch target, you're now presenting a 9-inch target. You guys will see when you're shooting, that makes a big difference because that's the size of the targets we're shooting at today. Enter the global war on terror when I served in the military. All of a sudden, everybody was issued level 4 ballistic body armor. Now when you blade your body to the enemy, now you're exposing the side where you don't have soft armor, okay? And now, enter the gunfighter course where everybody now shoots in that was Weaver. This is Isosceles. Apologies, I got that backward.
Oh, okay.
Weaver is, your feet are sort of like staggered. It's almost like you're throwing a punch or, playing tennis or, I don't know. Isosceles, your legs form a triangle and you square up on the target, and if he shoots you, he's going to hit you right in the plate, okay? So that was the theory, and you square up on the target. Which one is right? Doesn't matter. Whatever feels natural to you, whatever you want to do that, okay? Because I'm not wearing level 4 plates. I don't think any of you are today. I don't think anyone's ever planned on getting into a gunfight, but if you do, it's kind of good to know, okay? If you do, I think George, you mentioned you practice instinctive shooting, so a lot of security forces do that. If you do that type of shooting, or you do action shooting, which is my forte, like 3-gun or IPSC or IDPA, then that's completely out the window, and you do whatever you need to get behind that barricade or to get into like the weird goofy position that you need to shoot. Okay. Key thing: do what feels natural when it comes to stance. Clear as mud on that? Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about sights. And this is, of course, a terrible example. We're only talking about iron sights today, although later, actually, no, I got a couple of red dot sights, so we'll play around with those later at the end. Most sights operate as we're going to get confused on so much terminology. When we're shooting Swiss, we have what's called open division, which is just iron sights. Okay. Open sights. It's funny, if you talk about IPSC, open sight, open division means you just put whatever garbage you want to put on your gun. You want to put a rubber duck, you want to put a red dot sight, you want to put like, you know, how best to not, I'm trying to not think of something that would get me banned from YouTube. But anyways, that's a whole other ball games. Iron sights is always a front sight with a rear sight. The front sight is in the notch of the rear sight, okay? Generally speaking, it's level on top, so that what you should see as a sight picture is this front sight post inside the middle of a rear sight, a rear notch, okay? And you can go ahead and pass around my Glock slide. You can see right away I'm breaking the rules with this guy because this is a different sight. It's a similar concept, but that one works on a V-notch concept. So there's a V and a dot. Okay. Similar sort of concept. The key thing is when you're squared off on your target, when you're aiming. Okay, I'm gonna like try to prevent myself from having an aneurysm from TikTok because I have teenage girls. Yeah, of course. TikTok gun guys saying, "Oh yeah, like you just gotta focus on the target. No, you just gotta focus on the rear sight." For decades, they've been saying, "Focus on the front sight. The front sight, front sight, front sight." So you identify your target. You present your gun on target. When you're committing to your shot, your focus is on the front sight. Okay, it's not the notch, not the target, the front sight. Does that make sense? Okay. The reason for that is that is the furthest point of the gun under your control, right? And that is the point that, given that that is under your control, that is the part that if you focus on, you have the highest probability of the bullet striking whatever is aligned to that front sight. Okay, that's kind of like the underlying logic behind that. I was watching an IPSC grandmaster. He was saying, "Yeah, no, I just focus on the rear sight." I can't argue that he's an IPSC grandmaster, right? I mean, he's probably like, you know, getting sponsored by like Glock to like, you know, go to shoot competitions. But his line of work, where he's doing a lot of run and gun, it doesn't place emphasis on precision shooting. So maybe that might work. So George, for example, in your line of work, that might hold more valid, that might be more valid, maybe. So instead of focusing on here, to focus on here, or instead of focusing here, to focus on here. But you know, the name of the game that we're doing today is more bullseye focused. So when it is bullseye, just focus on the front side. Clear as mud?
Can I make a note so that
absolutely.
Some high points? Or?
Absolutely, and in fact, I will upload this onto YouTube. That's why I'm recording it, and I'll send you the recording afterwards so you can watch it, and I will even transcribe it if you want and give you a little. I'll do that. I'll transcribe it and send a worksheet.
Okay, that's even better. So, yeah.
So
perfect.
I also am an AI engineer, so that's not really much work. It'll take me like 10 seconds to do.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about sights. We talked about grip. We talked about stance. Let's talk about trigger. Okay. Now, George mentioned you had a Glock. Anybody else have a Glock or a striker-fired gun like that? Glock.
Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson, same idea.
CZ.
Okay, CZ. CZ's a bit different, but.
And SIG P320.
SIG P320. Okay. Safe action, double single, and I'm pretty sure the CZ is hammer fired, right? Mm-hmm. It's a double single then. Okay. Oh boy. Okay, guys, let's clear the tables and begin the cage match. Okay, so I shouldn't say that. I'm a Glock guy, but you know, the U.S. Army chose the SIG, and every like major, like one of my former students, he's now he's one of USPSA grandmaster and the national champion, and he shoots a CZ. Mm-hmm. Even though I taught him with a Glock, it's like a knife to the back. It's like, how can you not? No. Okay, the CZ. I'm sure you're gonna know. Okay, let me wait until I explain let's wait until after I talk about triggers before I begin the octagon of CZ versus Glock versus. Okay, anyway. With a modern, sorry.
Nothing.
Pardon me. What was the name again? It was Merrick. No, Derek.
Marek.
Mark. All right, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, George, Chris, Jordan, and Hans. Okay. Semi-automatic pistols. All right. Modern semi-automatic pistols. Yeah, and all the guns mentioned here. Yeah, go, feel free. All the guns mentioned here, being semi-automatic. There's a concept known as trigger reset. Okay. Personally, the reason I like Glock is because the trigger reset is so obvious, right? You can when you shoot a Glock, you know where the trigger reset is. Okay. It's a little bit less obvious with a double action like a CZ or a SIG, but it's still, the principle still applies. Okay, the worst, I shouldn't say the worst. Then you can go to shoot a 1911, and then it still applies, but 1911 triggers are just completely different. The point I want to get across with this is that every pistol's trigger has a different profile, which makes the trigger reset different. Okay, now trigger placement. Ideally, it really changes for everyone. Everyone, hold your hand up. Okay, so. Your fingers are longer and thicker than mine. Your hand's pretty similar to mine. Excuse me. Your fingers are longer and thicker than mine. And yours are pretty close to mine as well. And Hans, okay. Hans, okay. Your hands are slightly bigger, thicker than mine, and slightly longer than mine. The point I'm getting with that is everybody's hand is a little bit different. So how you position your trigger finger on the trigger will be different. It generally should be somewhere between this knuckle and kind of the tip. I would advise not going right on the tip, but it should fall somewhere on there, okay? And again, everybody's different, so do what feels most natural. Make sense? Now, shooting semi-automatic, okay? Well, let's just talk about Glock, but you could equally apply this with a CZ or a SIG. You come up on target, and then you take up the slap on the trigger. Okay, with a Glock factory, you got to apply somewhere around 5 pounds of pressure to the trigger, okay, until you hit this thing called the wall. And with a Glock, you can feel the wall. It's really obvious. You've hit the wall. You've now hit the point where you put maybe an ounce or two more of pressure on the trigger, and the striker will drop and the gun will fire. Okay. Now, for both action and for Bullseye, what you really want to train yourself to do is when the shot breaks, hold the trigger back, all the way back, okay? And then after the gun has recoiled, slowly let your finger off the trigger until you feel the reset. For the Glock, it's going to be this huge, like you can just feel it. And at that point, the spring tension of the trigger is already taken up by your finger. So you only need to apply maybe another ounce of pressure to get the shot to break, okay? We call this catching the link or the trigger reset. Does that make sense to everybody? It'll make a lot more sense when we're shooting up there, okay? The reason that you want to do that though is newer shooters or inexperienced shooters, they'll take a shot like a shotgun or even a bolt action. You take a shot and you let off the trigger right away, okay? But then you need to re-engage the trigger and put that 5 pounds of pressure to get back to that same point, okay? Now when you're shooting for Bullseye, you want 5, 10 shots in the same hole. Well, if you're changing the position of your finger on the trigger, shot over shot, you're introducing some inconsistency, okay? So you want to take up the slap, hit the wall, take the shot. You want to train yourself to just apply an ounce of pressure to cause the shot to break, hold, and then let off until you catch the link again, okay? Then every shot is just an ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce. Instead of 5 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 pounds, it's 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce, 1 ounce. Does that make sense to everyone? Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's trigger. If you have a center fire pistol, you can actually just sit at home load up Star Wars, load up Aliens, load up whatever movie you want. Make sure you have no ammunition in your movie theater, home theater with you, and just practice dry firing. And that's seriously the best way you can improve your trigger control. Is just, Darth Vader, boom. Oh, Imperial Stormtrooper, boom. Right? Yeah, nobody's laughing, but that's honest to God what I've done. Like, my wife's like, "What the hell are you doing down here?" But anyways, okay. That's kind of at a high level, like a lot of the handgun basics. Are there any questions about any of that? Clear as mud? Now at this point, I'm going to just quickly close this video off. Okay. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hopefully we can see you at the next session 2 months from now. All right. Bye. And don't forget to, I don't care about my YouTube channel, so don't bother liking and subscribing and all that cool jazz. Comment that I'm a sharpshooter. Not me, you. Okay.